Hi, this is Margaret Maloney, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. Together we will consider life, death, and impermanence. Because in between birth and death, we lose things. Not just our glasses and our keys. We lose identities, relationships, ideas, and more. But what we can gain right now is facing this together, and we will gain freedom, peace, and progress on our path. Hello, my friends. Well, after spending time with Hector Marcel, one of my biggest takeaways was the sense of being in the presence of someone who is joyfully in his practice. And this overall feeling of sharing a space with a person who's really willing to discuss the challenges we face with impermanence and suffering, and who, like the rest of us, continues to work with the rising and ceasing of sadness or loneliness or joy, and approaches it with exuberance and hope. You know, there's a point in our discussion where he mentions the controversial debate over whether or not the Buddha had any form of desire. He mentions that the Buddha desires you to be free from suffering. But it's not ignorant desire, like the kind that causes us, negative clinging and craving and attachment. There's a purpose there. And in my own research, I recall this passage from the Sikha Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. The Buddha discusses why he has created training for his disciples. And here's the passage. And how is liberation its core? Here the teachings have been taught by me to my disciples for the utterly complete destruction of suffering. Through liberation, one experiences those teachings in just the way that I have taught them to my disciples for the utterly complete destruction of suffering. It is in this way that liberation is at its core. And that's the end of the passage. Now, he's explaining in this passage, I'll say, the purpose behind his teachings and why he is teaching, but I don't think he's not wanting people to pay attention to him. It's like this podcast, I guess I'll say it like that. It's like this podcast, not so grandiose, though I don't think anything I'm saying is like what the Buddha said, but I am working with what the Buddha said. How's that? I want you to become comfortable with impermanence and ultimately with death, because I believe this will help you live your life more fully. But I can't make you do it, and I'm not walking around, I'll say, obsessed about it, no matter what people tell you. I'm not death obsessed. I just offer this podcast and these teachings as a way to help you so that there will be more peace. Now, because the Buddha possessed equanimity, it's hard to imagine him becoming upset if nobody followed his teachings. We can't know, because we are, in fact, still following his teachings, right? But that doesn't mean that he did not have the wholesome wish for us to be able to find our way out of suffering. And that also helps to remind us that equanimity doesn't mean apathy. It's even-mindedness. And in speaking with Hector, there's definitely this sense that he wants all of us to be able to draw upon our Buddhist practice and understand the source of our own suffering, and to recognize that when sadness or loneliness or even happiness arise, emotions have come from our own creation. We talked about a scenario where perhaps, sitting and having a cup of tea by yourself might bring up loneliness, but the tea didn't do it. And it's not the act of sitting to have tea. And the person who's not with you isn't causing you loneliness. It's come from your mind. This is how we are trapped in the cycle of becoming. Where there is this, that arises. And our causes and conditions come from our karma, our past and current actions. As Hector said, the Buddha could not make anyone become enlightened. He didn't make anyone become enlightened. And Hector cannot make us understand and adopt the teachings. We each must do the work ourselves. I can't make you make friends with death. I can only offer these podcasts and some of the things I write up to you for you to include as part of your practice to help you have a more peaceful and happy life, to live more fully. In the past, I have said there's no magic, no suffering silver bullet. What we can do is work on who and how we are. And that brings us to hope. I ended my discussion with Hector with him expressing hope for the sufferings he sees around the world, which are real, and that they can be completely undone. He feels like all the suffering that we have can be completely undone. And I agree with him. If we understand that we only have one job, there you go, everyone. You have one job. And that one job is my response to the next weed. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, when we were having a discussion about karma and causes and conditions and even emptiness, and we were talking about how things go back to intention, which sets my karma. And so in the past, depending on how I've behaved and with what intention, I'm planting seeds. And we use the analogy of a garden, and, things grow in the garden. And, every once in a while you're in your garden and you look and you think, where did that come from? I used to have this one particular flower that would show up all over my yard, which was not a bad thing, but it was puzzling to me. And I think that it was possibly from birds eating the seeds and then depositing those seeds around the yard. It was just interesting. And in that way, we behave and have intentions, and those become seeds, and those seeds come up, and sometimes they're flowers, and maybe sometimes we perceive them as weeds. And so when I said, we understand we have one job, and that job is, to pay attention to my next response to the next weed. When something comes up that I perceive as negative, how do I respond? How do I respond? And do I plant the seeds for more weeds? Or do I plant the seeds for more flowers? Do I have beneficial and skillful actions and skillful thoughts and intentions? In which case I can have flowers and maybe even big, beautiful trees. Whenever I can, I want to work to respond to the next weed with kindness. The more kind that I can be to myself in the world, regardless of how difficult the situation is in the world, then I'm not planting future weeds. So when, Hector says, we have one job, and previously he mentioned, the Buddha can make you be enlightened. And I say to you, I can't force you to become friends with death. The one job is about working on yourself and using your Buddhist practice to help yourself come to this place where you can meet the weeds with kindness, where you can move forward with equanimity. And that's not selfish, because what can you change? What you can change is yourself. And when you can make those changes, then your response will help weed out the suffering from everyone else on the planet. And like Hector said at the end, he says, I feel this to my bone. And now my life has meaning. And those were beautiful words. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, margaretmeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.